Welcome into the Hard Count, the People's College Football Show. Week 12 already. I know, it hurts my heart a little bit too, but it is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. Got a lot to get into. It is Prediction Tuesday, baby. We got picks for you with Georgia, Tennessee, got picks on Colorado, trying to stay in the college football playoff hunt with Utah coming to town. That'll be a good test now for Coach Prime and company. Excited to break that one down with y'all. Also, now we got Nebraska and USC. Interesting spot for both of those schools. You got USC making a quarterback change. You got Nebraska making a play caller change. So, that is the most volatile spot, I think, of this whole Week 12 slate. So, who knows who's going to win that one? We're going to take our best swing at that. Also now, you got South Carolina just, quietly doing what they do in the month of November. Shane Beamer, man, all he does is win when it comes to the latter part of the season. Missouri rolling into town now. And Eli Drinkwitz, he said post-game on the field last week against Oklahoma after they beat the Sooners, playoff hunt. I don't know if I'm buying that, but if you want to stay in the playoff hunt or give yourself a chance, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to go beat a ranked South Carolina team at their place. So we'll give you our pick in that one. Also now, mixed into this Prediction Tuesday, got some storylines I want us to unpack together. I'll say this right now. I think Brian Kelly will still win a national title at LSU. I know everybody is talking about the world ending and the sky falling in Baton Rouge, and I get it, man. This year was tough. This year so far has been tough relative to, I think, what you expect at LSU. Will Campbell said before the year, he's like, you go 10-2 here, you get fired. Well, right now, LSU's ceiling is finishing 9-3 and then getting a bowl win to get 10 wins. But the fact remains the same. I think if you're an LSU fan, I would be very slow to punt on the national title aspirations long-term when it comes to Brian Kelly and what he's doing out there in Baton Rouge. And then also, for those of y'all that were keeping tabs on what was going on out there in the world of college football recruiting, y'all, you look up, National Signing Day is less than a month away. That's wild. Right around the corner. Julian Lewis now, the high-profile quarterback commit to USC. Some expert predictions went in yesterday from Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons that Julian Lewis is potentially going to flip from USC to Colorado. Now, those are the predictions. What does that mean for us on the college football side of things? We'll give you our takes there as well. Like I said, glad to have y'all here, man. This is an absolute pleasure and a privilege to talk college football with y'all on a daily basis. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, would encourage you to do that. We were talking in the office yesterday, man. Spotify Wrapped season, Apple Recap season, right around the corner. So if you're trying to juice those numbers up a little bit, I don't know how podcasts factor in, but I would be rather safe than sorry. So go ahead and subscribe to the podcast feed. You type in the Hard Count with JD PicKell. We're on both those platforms. Get dialed in. Leave a review. We appreciate you in advance for getting that done. College football playoff rankings tonight. As soon as we get those rankings, I got a TV screen off to my right over here. We'll watch the rankings. We'll jot some notes down. We'll stare down the barrel of this here camera. We'll give you our reaction. So, again, another reason to be subscribed. We'll have our reaction to those second rankings for you tonight. I know for a lot of us, that will be the sample size of college basketball that we make our March Madness bracket with. So we'll lock in for that one. One more housekeeping note. I've been alluding to it several different live shows now for the past, week to 2 weeks. My baby girl said she wants to be here for the Tennessee-Georgia matchup. So with that being said, I will likely be passing off this show, our Thursday show, to someone else looking like it's going to be Andy Staples. That's the betting favorite. But bottom line, we'll still have a show. If I'm not here with you on Thursday, likely won't be here with y'all on Thursday, it's because my family of two is now a family of three with my wife and our baby girl and myself. So with that being said, man, excited to talk some ball with y'all. This Week 12 slate's going to be electric. Let's start with the entree. Forget the appetizers. We'll get there. Let's start with the entree. Tennessee at Georgia. Georgia. This line was all over the place. Started at 8.5, went up to 10.5 on Sunday morning, and now it's down to, down. It's at 9.5, favoring the Bulldogs. 7:30 Eastern, ABC, Herbie and Fowler. Athens will be absolutely on fire. I think there's a lot of conversation around the home atmosphere between the hedges. You're going to get their best. I promise you that. They will be absolutely dialed in to the nth degree. Think about it this way, too. The reason why they will be dialed in as much as I think we've seen a Georgia crowd be, this is the most important regular season game under Kirby Smart I think you've had since he got the job. And that sounds a bit hyperbolic, but you start to do the math here and you look at what he's done since he's been at Georgia. Like with the new 12-team playoff format, if Georgia loses this game, They will have their third loss. They will be out of the college football playoff. Preseason, Georgia was favored to win the whole darn thing. Forget just making the playoff. They were supposed to win the whole thing. And so if you lose this game at home to a redshirt freshman quarterback, after you were supposed to be, again, the team that won the national championship and Carson Beck's supposed to win the Heisman, like, think of just the letdown that would be. It doesn't mean Kirby Smart's the wrong guy. It doesn't mean that Georgia's run is over as one of the big dogs in the sport. But, like, in terms of importance and impact, Georgia is as backed into a corner as I think we've ever seen. And, again, this is the most important game regular season-wise under Kirby Smart since he's gotten the job. Now, if you get a win here, everyone's talking about Georgia and what's going to happen if they don't win. If they win, they're in the college football playoff. All this discussion about the 10-2s in the SEC, and we'll get to that tomorrow, I promise you. But if Georgia wins this game, they're in. Make no mistake about it. Now for Tennessee, the stakes are equally massive for them. And I don't think it's a situation where if Tennessee loses, they're out of the college football playoff hunt. I don't think I would go as far to say that. But I think optically, the impact this could have for Josh Heupel's Tennessee, if Tennessee beats Georgia in this game, and then you also pair that with the fact that they beat Alabama, Tennessee is knocking on the door and I think stepping through the threshold of big dog status in the SEC. Because we talked about this a lot with how Tennessee recruits the quarterback position and, skill players want to come to Tennessee and play in that offense. But, like, if you go beat Tennessee, or if you go beat Georgia and Alabama in the same year, if you're Tennessee, think about the way that you're perceived on the recruiting trail. Think about Josh Heupel walking into a living room and talking to 4 or 5-star defensive and offensive linemen and then adding that level of physicality to what they already have on both sides of the football. I think at that point, again, the rocket ship that is Tennessee football under Josh Heupel, you pour even more gasoline on that bad boy and you are taking off. Because right now they got a top 10 class in 2024. Have to believe now more winning, especially a marketable moment like a win over Georgia at their place, probably wouldn't hurt that, in my humble opinion. Now, in this game, man, if I'm Tennessee, I don't think it takes anything superhuman to win this football game. Like, this is, I think, as gettable of a Georgia team as you've seen since you've been there if you're Josh Heupel. And we've seen it, too. Like, the blueprint is out there for everyone to see. Like, Georgia last week against Ole Miss, what was the problem? One, Ole Miss got after their quarterback, got after him with 4 players, mind you. It wasn't like Ole Miss was bringing all these different exotic blitzes and they were, bringing the house. They got home with 4 and got home quite a bit, actually, to the tune of 5 sacks. And then they won in man coverage. Now, Jackson Dart did not have a crazy day at the office. Ran the football well, 100% true. I think you need that from Nico as well to win this football game. But, like, Jackson Dart went over 200 yards. It wasn't like he went for 3 bills. Why they were successful in this game, going back to the blueprint here, get after the quarterback, win in man coverage on offense. The guy I'm looking at here for Tennessee is Squirrel White. Right? I love the other players they have as well in the perimeter with a Brew McCoy and a Chris Brazzell and Dante Thornton. Definitely got to get theirs. But I think the guy that makes you most nervous if you're Georgia, who can separate in space, is Squirrel White, who led your team in receiving a season ago. So do you have the guys to go win in man coverage? I think that's going to be the ultimate story here. And speaking of game flow with this blueprint, like, I think Tennessee has to go at Georgia early. Again, I don't think Nico has to have a crazy day at the office, but I do think he has to be timely. We spoke about this in our early look video. For Tennessee, like, Nico, I need that, like, burning hand on the stove moment against this Georgia defense. Like, I need you to early on hit a deep 40-yard shot to Squirrel White, hit a deep shot to Dante Thornton. And at that point in time now, if I'm Glenn Schumann, the defensive coordinator for Georgia, I have to honor that the rest of the afternoon. Whether I like it or not, whether I think you can do it again or not, I just have to assume that's something that you have in your bag, and I don't want to get 40-yarded again. Can't have it. So if that happens now, that plays exactly into who Tennessee wants to be. We think about Josh Heupel, we think about Jalen Hyde and the shot plays and Hendon Hooker in 2022, 100%, but, like, this Tennessee team, they run the ball, baby. You better bring your hard hat and lunch pail. They run the football. Right now, averaging 62% of the time run-to-pass ratio. All right, they're averaging 5 yards a carry. Dylan Sampson, I'll say this. I put in our Heisman group chat, if you will, a top 10 players for the Heisman Trophy Award that I would vote for if I had a vote after the week. For the last, I want to say month and a half, I've had Dylan Sampson in my top 10. So needless to say, Dylan Sampson, if you can get that light box from Nico with that deep shot early and be able to control the game, that favors Tennessee. Because as good as I think Georgia is defensively, I think that secondary is gettable. I think that possibility, that potential is definitely there for this Tennessee offense. Now, with that said, Speaking of Nico and what you need from him in this game, the thing that concerns me is how out of rhythm Georgia was able to make an experienced player in Quinn Ewers. Like Jackson Dart, I mentioned what he didn't have to do against Georgia. What I thought he did at a really high level was he was seeing the whole picture, right? Like he was seeing the blitz, he was getting to his hots, he was finding the open man. Like there was nothing that felt like it was overwhelming to Jackson Dart. If I'm Nico Iamaleava, I just can't be overwhelmed in this spot. On the road, college game day, night game between the hedges, like you got to have a cool heart rate and be able to process things at a decent enough level to be able to keep your team on schedule. Because if it becomes a situation where you're living in 3rd and 7, like Tennessee's not winning this football game. Hate to say it. Now for Georgia, man, they got to help Carson Beck. And the storyline of the last month, I would say, is Carson Beck's throwing picks, he's this, he's that, and that's totally true, that's totally fair. He's got to take better care of the football. But to me, I'm looking at what Georgia is right now, and I'm like, okay, well then who are you turning to outside of Carson Beck to help him? Like I don't see a Brock Bowers on the other sideline. I don't see a Ladd McConkey. I don't see anybody that like strikes fear in my heart if I'm the opposing defensive coordinator. Like I need somebody somehow, some way to help Carson Beck. Because look at Georgia, what they're doing offensively, man. They're not running the football well either. They're 104th in America, 119 rush yards a game. What happened to vintage Georgia? What happened to Georgia playing a walk-on quarterback in Stetson Bennett? Stetson Bennett 1.0 now, before he evolved and became 2.0 Heisman finalist Stetson Bennett. What happened to Georgia that could just say, we're going to run the football, doesn't matter who we got at quarterback or what kind of day he's having, we're going to punch you in the mouth, best of luck to you. I don't see that Georgia right now. I don't see that, but I'll tell you what now, with one of the best, if not the best, rush defenses in America coming to your place, now would be the time to draw the line in the sand. So going back to the personnel, there's nobody that scares me on the perimeter. You need more from your running back room. That's 100% true, whether it be Etienne or whether it be Frazier. At the end of the day, man, the further we get into this conversation, the more I think I say, okay, I don't think they have what they need at the personnel level when it comes to the skill players. So if you don't have what you need from a skill player perspective, who's in charge of elevating that? The quarterback, yes, 100% true. I'm looking at Mike Bobo. Like I need a Mike Bobo kind of special here in this game against Tennessee. Because I think when we talk about Georgia's talent level, they don't have, I don't think, like superior players to what Tennessee has had from a talent gap perspective, like maybe they did a couple of years ago. Like Georgia lost that game to Ole Miss because Ole Miss had better players. And I don't think Tennessee has all that much worse of a defense than Ole Miss does, if we're going to be honest. I think Tennessee's probably on par with what Ole Miss has defensively. James Pierce is going to be a top 10 pick probably this time next year. Like, you got your work cut out for you if you're Georgia. So for Mike Bobo, let's get creative a little bit. Let's get in the bag. Let's get the misdirection. Like this offensive line, I mentioned the rush yard numbers. I like them a lot more in space. I like when they get the ball on the perimeter to a Dominique Lovett in the quick screen game or to a London Humphreys. Or like we got to find a way to manufacture some explosives. Because when you look at this box score after the game, it cannot be the same story where Cash Jones has your longest reception of the afternoon. You're not going to win that way. Like if Cash Jones has the longest reception of the game, Georgia's losing. I'll tell you what, it's probably not going to be all that good looking. Just so we're on the same page there. So we say all that to get down to this prediction. There's a way things look on paper, and there is a way that things eventually look once you put the ball down and play on the grass. And as I was breaking down this game, y'all, you look at every single part of this matchup, and like you can make an argument, if not a strong case, for Tennessee. Offensive line versus defensive line of that Tennessee front, like I'll take Tennessee up front. Running the football, I'll take Tennessee. Skill players, neither side's been all that impressive. I'll take Tennessee there. But I keep going back to this idea, man. I've seen Kirby Smart do the Thanos thing. You know what I'm talking about. He'll snap, and then all of a sudden, different Georgia. And on the drive-in this morning, I still didn't have my pick finalized, just full transparency, getting into the office this morning. And I could not help but remember how dumb I felt sitting behind this desk and looking into the windows of your soul through this camera on a Sunday morning after Georgia took it to Texas and saying, I can't believe I didn't see that coming. So if Georgia loses, it's not going to be because I didn't pick them. We will take Georgia to win. I will take Tennessee to cover. 9.5 is far too rich. I am betting on the fact that I think Kirby Smart still has got one of those pregame speeches in him. Hopefully it gets leaked on the social media platforms afterwards and we get a chance to get dialed in for whatever our 8 to 5 job is that next day. But I'm just saying now, Kirby Smart, I think, still has to use the Vince Carter meme. I think he's got one more in him. He's got one more in him. I'll think Georgia wins. I think the final score is 29-24 in Athens. And, y'all, if Georgia loses that game, if we're wrong, oh, my gosh, the storylines afterwards, here we go. Here we go. But that's why college football is the greatest sport on the face of the planet. All right. Hey, glad to have y'all part of this. Everyone tuned into the live chat, make sure you have liked the video. Want to make sure y'all know the Hard Count brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, daily fantasy, made easy to use. If you have been following us on this show, you've paid for some Christmas presents, all right? I don't think I'm allowed to say that you're going to change tax brackets or promise you that we're going to win. I think that's like actually the exact opposite of what I'm supposed to say. But I'll just say this. If you've been following us, you have made some money. So we'll make that clear. If you want to follow us, use code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, just getting started. Well, $5, you'll probably find that between the couch cushions today. Gets you $50 in promo funds. So thank you for using that code. We get a chance to see who uses that code, and we get the report every month. And every month, y'all have been crushing it with that. So thank you. So code HARDCOUNT over at PrizePicks.com, a good way to squeeze all the juice out of your college football Saturday. So we got some more predictions for you a little bit later. I got Nebraska USC in a minute. I got thoughts on Colorado and their game against Utah in a little bit. But I want to start with this because it's our Tuesday show. It's our first live show that we get to have together since the games that happened. And if y'all watched the games that happened on Saturday, man, it was ugly in Death Valley. It was very, very ugly. Alabama rolled into Death Valley and just took that thing over. Brian Kelly getting his first loss at night. And we saw it coming. We said it would happen if LSU lost this game. The narratives, the storylines, the networks just running with this thought of like, well, Brian Kelly must not be the right guy. Brian Kelly, he must. I mean, we keep finding the situation, man, where Brian Kelly can't win the big game or Brian Kelly doesn't have his team ready and they had a bye week and a mobile quarterback lit them on fire. And I understand all that. That's all fair. But I'm telling you this right now. Brian Kelly will still win a national title at LSU. Make no mistake about it. The things that you're upset about with this season are totally valid. Totally valid. Lost the opener for the third year in a row. Nobody's telling you to stomach that and be okay with that. The defense, yet again, did not come to play. Something you've seen now in multiple big spots since Brian Kelly's got there. Not okay. Not okay to still have that issue. However, when you look at this season, I'm not telling you to be okay with mediocrity, but I would ask the question, like, was this ever supposed to be the year for LSU? Looking at what last year was going into this season, was this supposed to be the year where you went on and won a national title? You're saying, JD, we didn't want to win a national title. I mean, we did. We just wanted to make the college football playoff. Yeah, that's fair. But again, that was always kind of like the podium you were trying to stand on, was go win 10 football games. Your preseason win total, I believe, was somewhere at 9.5, depending on where you were looking. Last year, you had 3 first-round picks on your offense. They all left, including your Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. You also lost your offensive coordinator. You hit a complete reset on your defensive staff. I'm not telling you to be okay with it, but I am saying when you zoom out a little bit, this year, as frustrating as it is, and I'm not telling you that there's anything that qualifies, the lack of success this year, but you look at the practical parts of what went into this year, you can see why we are where we are. All right, and I'll say this too. I think for Brian Kelly, man, like all the reasons you hired him at LSU are still very much so intact. The whole thought process, the whole methodology of why Brian Kelly will work at LSU and why you thought he'd work at LSU, you brought in a coach that's won 70% of his games. And by the end of the year, he will have coached 400 football games, y'all. He's won 70% of those. And you brought him to a place where, quite frankly, lesser coaches have won national titles. And that's not me trying to dunk on Ed Orgeron or Les Miles, but like Brian Kelly has a stronger track record than both those dudes. And they won national titles. Why? Because of the recruiting fertility, because of the resources, because of the brand that LSU is, because of what you can do at a place like LSU with the resources. If you have the right coach, you can go win at a high level. And I get the game has changed with NIL and the portal and all those things, but like, are you telling me Brian Kelly over the course of the next year to 2 years isn't going to get that more dialed into? I mean, look at what he's doing on the recruiting trail. He is, if things were to hold as they stand today on the On3 industry team recruiting rankings, he would have his third top 10 class in 3 years, right? So it's not like they're not going after the right players and getting better players. I think everything you hired him for is still very much so intact. Now, I think the thing you push back against is say, well, JD, yes, I hear you. That's cool. We'll drink the Kool-Aid next year. We'll circle the wagons, and we'll be fired up for LSU next season. But right now, just let us let us feel the pain of this. I hear you, but like we got to still have a heart-to-heart. We still have to look ahead to the future and look ahead to what Brian Kelly's doing right now. As much as you're frustrated about the problems at LSU, what I would say is you have the same problems. You don't have different problems. Like I can live in a house where I got to figure out a way to patch my roof every couple of months. If I got the electricity going out one month and the next month my hot water doesn't work and then the week after my plumbing's broken, like if we have different issues every single year, then I'm like, okay, we can't figure this out. Give me the same problem, give me enough time, I can work with that. I can figure out a way to eventually fix those problems. And y'all, it's not like Brian Kelly's staying stagnant. Defense sucked last year. He says, okay, new DC, new defensive staff. Let's hit the reset button a little bit. Also, cherry on top to this year, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but like, have to think Harold Perkins would have been helpful against Jalen Milroe. Food for thought. But again, I think he's doing the right things. We just haven't seen the ultimate reward from those things that he's putting into practice in Baton Rouge. And you're not excusing it, but again, you're telling me that long-term he won't still win a national title? I wouldn't agree. And the comp that I think is true for Brian Kelly is one we had at SEC Media Days that I still will stand by. Leo DiCaprio, man, for a long time, wasn't winning Oscars. It was like all people would talk about when his name came up. Yeah, Leo's great, but hasn't won an Oscar. Hasn't won an Oscar. Hasn't won an Oscar. That's kind of the same vibe that I think people are getting with Brian Kelly. Yeah, he's a good coach. Hey, I just said it a second ago, 70% of his games over a 400-game career, he's won. Yeah, that's a good football coach. But nobody, I don't think, during that whole Oscar drought for Leonardo DiCaprio thought he wasn't ever going to win one. It was, for I think most people's opinions, a matter of time. I think that's Brian Kelly. And now, how did Leo DiCaprio win that Oscar? He had that one thing go right for him. Had that one movie, right? Revenant. I think Bryce Underwood, the number one quarterback in the class of 2025, number one player in the class of 2025, currently committed to LSU, I think that's Brian Kelly's Revenant. And so it's probably going to take some time here for that all to look how it's supposed to look. If I'm Brian Kelly, man, the ideal situation that I think you'll find yourself in here, I think Garrett Nussmeier, based on what he's done this year, has shown like, hey, it might be advantageous for you to come back. Have another season. Cut down on those interceptions. Get another year in the same system under Joe Sloan. Go prove what you can do. Because, like, you're not going ahead of Shedeur or Cam Ward. If I'm Garrett Nussmeier, come back for another year, have a chance to be the number one guy next year. I don't even know if he goes ahead of Quinn Ewers right now, to be frank with you. So the ideal situation is Garrett Nussmeier comes back, Bryce Underwood, your Revenant since for a year. Give him the keys the year after that. Hopefully he's all dialed into what college life is and college football is. At that point, then, you take off. So I'm not saying next year can't be the natty year, but I am saying Bryce Underwood and what Brian Kelly has done over the course of his career, paired with a place like LSU, with the resources, with the brand, with the recruiting. You can only do the right things for so long until you eventually have the output that you desire. And I think that's Brian Kelly, and I think that's LSU. So again, I'll say this loud and clear. Brian Kelly will still win a national title at LSU. And we'll go ahead and take that one to the bank. All right, now we got this is a good slate, man. I see why my baby girl wants to be here for this one, man. You got Nebraska at USC. This is the new Big Ten, man. You got two all-time logos going at it in the Coliseum. I wish USC was a little bit better so that home field advantage or that home field like just vibe within the Coliseum could be there. When the Coliseum is dialed in, it's a special place to be, neither here nor there. 4 Eastern on Fox, USC 8.5-point favorites in this game. 8.5 feels like a lot, especially with the changes that both schools are bringing into this matchup. For USC, there's a lot to unpack here because this year has not been the year that you wanted to have. It hasn't been. Like let's just be frank. This year you thought maybe you could be a dark horse college football playoff team. You could maybe find your way back door if you got the defense right. Defense got right. Like defense has done essentially what we've asked them to do. They're allowing 23 points a game. If you told me going into the year that USC's defense would allow 23 points a game, I'd say, okay, yeah, they're probably flirting with a double-digit kind of season when it comes to the win total. Hasn't been that case. But going back to what I was saying, you switch quarterbacks, all right? Jaden Maiava, transfer from UNLV, getting the keys to the offense. I think there's a chance now here in a couple of different sectors of the USC fan base when it comes to your postseason conversation. Jaden Maiava, you would imagine, will get the keys for these last 3 games. If you finish the year 3-0 with him at the helm, you say, okay, well, hey, there you go. We just had the wrong guy playing quarterback. Or, hey, there you go. We just needed to get some more juice out there offensively and have the mobile guy get rolling. You're also probably not saying, well, we need to go to the portal and find a solution at quarterback. You're saying, okay, the future looks bright with this guy at quarterback. You're also saying, when it comes to the conversation around Lincoln Riley, he still got it. Hey, we thought maybe the whole Miller-Moss thing wasn't going the way we wanted it to, and we were worried about Lincoln Riley because that was what we banked on with him as the head coach, being the quarterback whisperer. Hey, he still got it. So this is a chance for Lincoln Riley to prove to the USC fan base yet again, like, hey, I'm still the quarterback guy. We're going to be okay. First year in the Big Ten, we took our lumps, but look at how we finished. And how we finish is the key part here, because USC, man, like 7-5 leaves a lot to be desired. But if you finish the right way with this quarterback, I think there's a chance now to kind of change the conversation when you get into the months of February, March, and so on and so forth, if you're a USC fan. Now, that's where USC is. Where Nebraska is, it's funny because these teams have similar records. USC sitting there at 4-5, Nebraska sitting there at 5-4. How many of us know, man, Nebraska, that 6th win has been elusive, been very elusive. Since 2016, elusive, that is. Now, for Nebraska, as weird as it is to say, as weird as these last couple of weeks have been, where you've been reeling off these losses and you're like, okay, here we go again. Losing to UCLA, not great. The way we lost to Indiana, the way we lost to Ohio State, okay, here we go again. We got to find a way, boys, to get one more. With 3 games left, if Nebraska can get this win and finish the year strong, which I think are all winnable football games with what they have left, the game against Iowa especially at the end would be an exclamation mark if you can get to 8 wins. As weird as it is, you have a chance, I think, to still make good on that preseason billboard that you were circling around if you're a Nebraska Cornhusker fan, which is progress. Progress, trajectory, kind of what we said about with LSU. Like, this was never the year where Nebraska was going to go win the Big Ten. This was the year, though, where you got to 7 or 8 wins, ended the bowl drought definitively, and got excited about the future under Dylan Raiola. Now, that's, I think, where the conversation within this football game should start. Because Matt Rule making a move on the offensive side of the ball. Dana Holgorsen, former West Virginia head coach, is going to be the play caller. And to me, what this says, I know it's a move for the future, or not a move for the future, excuse me. This is a move for right now, not a move for the future is what Matt Rule said. But even with us having that quote, that soundbite, this is a move where you're trying to maximize a guy who is the future of your football program, in Dylan Raiola. Because to be honest, man, the formula of what you thought Nebraska would look like going into the season has not really been there. You thought it was going to be play great defense and run the football, right? Well, defense has been solid. Defense hasn't been abysmal by any stretch, but you are 3.4 yards a carry on the year, 111th in the country. You are 122 rush yards a game, number 98 in the country. So what we thought we could bank on to kind of get our true freshman quarterback a little bit more comfortable, not there anymore. Well, it's also start number 10 for Dylan Raiola. Like, this is a point now, this is a move to me, if I'm Matt Rule, bringing in a guy who is the quarterback whisperer, a guy who's coached guys like Will Greer, a guy who's coached guys like Case Keenum. Say, okay, we're taking the training wheels off, and we are leaning a little bit more heavily on you here, Dylan Raiola. We're going to go as you go. And I'll say this, if Nebraska gets 15% more production out of Dylan Raiola, just 15% more of his ability out of Dylan Raiola, Nebraska, I think, will win this football game, and Nebraska, I think, will finish the season with 8 wins. That is how, I think, impactful Dana Holgorsen can be with Dylan Raiola's maturation and with his process. Now, the area of opportunity within this football game, as fate would have it, lies in the passing game. Because USC, as much as they've improved on defense, they're still number 79 in America when it comes to passing yards allowed per game. So, like, there is a chance now, if you get that pass game dialed in, this new offense dialed in, Dylan Raiola, up your level of play, there's going to be plays to be had. The guy that I would look at most closely here, if I'm Nebraska, Ja'Cory Barney, is a man-to-man nightmare. USC likes to play man-to-man coverage. So if I'm Dana Holgorsen here, I'm doing the math. I'm a Nebraska fan. Okay, quarterback whisperer, air raid background, guy who wins man-to-man matchups in Ja'Cory Barney, super talented quarterback in Dylan Raiola. Let's get this party started. Let's get the good times rolling. So I expect Nebraska to be aggressive, and I expect Dylan Raiola to swing his freaking sword in this game, man. Shout out Mike Leach. Now, a lack of success in that department would mean that USC probably, offensively at least, doesn't need to ask as much of Jaden Mayava. in his first start as the guy at USC. Probably don't need to score 30. You can get away with scoring 24, 26. And if this pass game doesn't give you issues, if you're USC, okay, we can kind of ease him into this game. But let's talk about that, because the change for Nebraska on the offensive side is massive. It's equally massive for USC. Miller Moss, thank you so much. Jaden Maiava, going to give you a chance here. And I want to make sure this is on the record. Like, the issue with USC is not Miller Moss centric. Like, Miller Moss, yeah, throwing more picks than you would like, but I don't know if there's a lot of games you point to and say that's on Miller Moss. I think it's a collection of errors. They've been up, I believe, in just about every single game they've won or lost in the fourth quarter. They've been up in that game in the fourth quarter. Like, it has been a team thing. So Miller Moss, it's not so much that he is the problem, but it is, I think, a situation where you needed something different. You had to make a change. You had to find a way to get more out of your offense and get more out of your football team. And I think the comp for me here, it's a lot like changing the music at the party. Like, the party's not bad. Like, a lot of people here, good conversation. There's a little bit of buzz in the air. Like it's not a bad party, but like, hey, we've been playing Drake for the last hour and a half, and vibes haven't changed. There's not this like crescendo of a good time. Like, we gotta find a way here. It's nothing on Drake. I mean, I love More Life as much as anybody. I'm all about views. I mean, play Scorpion, whatever you want to play. Like, pick a Drake album. I'm good with most of that, but we've played it for the last hour. We've gone with Miller Moss for the entirety of the season, and it's not cutting it. So it may not be Miller Moss's fault. It might not be on my man who's on the aux playing Drake for the last hour. We got to make a change. We got to get some Marvin Gaye on. Got to get some Earth, Wind, and Fire. Heck, let's throw some Rolling Stones on there. We got to do something different to get more out of this whole situation. So they passed the aux to Jaden Maiava. Now, Jaden Maiava does bring a different skill set to what USC does offensively. Big dude, like 6'3", 6'4", can move a little bit, brings some mobility to the table. If I'm Lincoln Riley, I am leaning on the versatility in the run game to try and get Nebraska off balance. And I think you also need to find a way now to elevate these other playmakers in the perimeter. Because I'm sitting here looking at who USC has on the outside, and I'm like, man, they got some dudes. Like Zachariah Branch, what he did last year, I mean, he had you fired up if you're a USC fan, what he was going to do for his encore as a true sophomore. Jacoby Lane's been awesome at times. He got like 14 targets and 10 catches against Wisconsin. Went road to glory against those guys. I mean, Mekhi Lemon looked awesome at times this year, but the issue is you have 0 USC wide receivers with multiple 100-yard games. Got a couple of guys with over 100 yards in one spot, but you haven't seen the consistency. So some of that's on the quarterback, some of that's on the play calling, some of that's, quite frankly, on who you're playing against and what that game requires. But, like, with Jaden Maiava in this spot, I would love to see them target one of those receivers, go to work, find a matchup, and just attack it all game long. Because Nebraska, they're also going to play some man coverage. And so I would be aggressive downfield as well. But here's the thing that Jaden Maiava brings to the table. With his mobility, if you want to play man coverage, great. But understand now, you don't have 2 sets of eyeballs. You only got one, and it can look at one thing at one time. And so if I'm looking at my wide receiver in man coverage, as you're supposed to do, guess who I'm not looking at? Jaden Maiava, who broke contain. He's now 10 yards downfield. He's got a first down for USC, and the drive extends, and vibes are not great on the Nebraska sideline. So I'd love to see a little bit more of that from Jaden Maiava. I'd love to see a little bit more of the versatility in the run game, like I mentioned. Woody Marks, get him going, take some pressure off him with Jaden Maiava in the read option. Just mix it up a little bit. The element of surprise for both teams here makes this the most volatile spot, I think, this entire Week 12 slate. Like, we don't know what we're getting from Nebraska offensively. We definitely don't know what we're getting from Jaden Maiava for USC offensively. Now, here's, like, I think the end-all, be-all. USC just, like, has got to meet the physicality of Nebraska for 4 quarters. Notice what I said there, 4 quarters. Not for the first half, not meet them on that first drive, not play a great 3-quarter game. Like, Nebraska, man, we talk a lot about, where the psyche is at for both these teams. Nebraska's dialed in. Nebraska's got a lot to play for. You get one more win, you're bowling, like that means something to that operation. I don't know where USC is at psychologically. Not saying they're in a bad place. I'm just saying I don't know. Because of the fact that they've lost all these fourth-quarter games, because of the fact you made a quarterback change, you're in the Big Ten, you're getting worn down a little bit here. Like, I'm curious where they're at. Because to stop the run and to play with how I think Nebraska ultimately is going to play, yes, they got an air raid background on Dana Holgorsen taking over the show, but like Nebraska with who Matt Rule is, they're still going to make it a point where you have to stop us up front. Whether it's 20 times, whether it's 40 times. Now, 40 would surprise me, but like there's going to be some level of prove to us that you are physical enough to stop us up front. I wonder if USC has got the psychological state of mind right now to be able to meet that consistently. Your heart has got to be in it a little bit to stop the run. I don't know where USC's at right now. So what I said, the most volatile spot of the entire Week 12 slate. You could see two very different operations than we've seen throughout the entirety of the season. But I cannot get over the fact that I know where Nebraska is at. Matt Rule running the show, I know where they're at. I know they're engaged. I know they care. I know they're doing a good job of flushing the bad and getting on to the good. You expect Dylan Raiola to play in this game. If you're a Nebraska fan, you hope he is as healthy as he needs to be. But I'm not sold on where USC is at. I'm not sold on how engaged they are this week. So with that being said, I will take Nebraska to win. USC with an 8.5-point favorite in this game. We'll take Nebraska, obviously, to cover with them winning. So Nebraska, for the first time in a minute now, going bowling and have the trajectory of everything you thought you could be preseason still very much so on the table. That'd be big, man. For Nebraska, too, I'll say this, that's a long flight back. A long flight back from Los Angeles. You'd like to check out of LAX with a win in your back pocket. I'll just say that. Now, speaking of USC, man, Julian Lewis, high-profile quarterback, currently committed to USC. But if you were checking the socials yesterday, you were seeing over on the On3 Recruit social media, you were seeing on the On3 main page social media, both Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong, two of the best in the industry that we have here at On3, put in flip picks for Julian Lewis to flip from USC to Colorado. The plot thickens. With signing day less than a month away, things are ramping up. So what does this mean, man? I think for a lot of us, man, we'll talk about Colorado a little bit later in this live show, but like there's been, I think, a lot of speculation and thoughts around what Deion Sanders would do past this year. I think it has been very difficult as a college football public to imagine Colorado being successful once Shedeur Sanders leaves, once Travis Hunter leaves. And the question, I think, very fairly has become, well, does that mean Deion Sanders stays? I think if Julian Lewis does, in fact, flip from USC to Colorado, I would have to believe there were conversations there to ensure Julian Lewis that Deion Sanders would be there. So to put it simply, I'd feel great about the potential of Deion Sanders staying at Colorado past this year. I'd feel great about the future of Colorado because you don't go get a quarterback of the future if you're not going to be there for the future. I think probably as importantly what I just said, I don't think you can sell the future without ensuring Julian Lewis that he is going to be there for the future. All right? So you feel better about Deion Sanders staying if you're a college football fan, period, or a Colorado fan. I think it also means that you can really do some damage now at the high school level when it comes to recruitment. Because Colorado early on, what they had to do? Had to flip it, man. And I mean, can you blame Deion Sanders for going portal heavy? That the roster he got was a one-win operation. One win. Translation, we got to get better players. From the jump, we have to get better players. Where are better players that can help us win right now? It's not 18-year-olds. Maybe there's a couple from the high school level that can help us, but like, we probably got to go get some dudes that have real college football experience that can help us right now. So you go to the portal, you flip it. But if you get a Julian Lewis now, the plan has always been for Deion Sanders, since he got there, was to lean portal heavy early, always utilize the portal, but to maybe shift a percentage of how you acquire that roster to a little more high school. A little more high school players. And so if you get Julian Lewis now, you can make the pitch to wide receivers, to linemen, heck, to defensive guys. Like, hey, this is your quarterback for the future. If you want to be in this class and where this thing is headed, jump in the rocket ship, baby, because this is where this is headed. You have what I like to say is you like to have a lead actor for the movie poster that is your recruiting class. Julian Lewis is on the front of that movie poster if he does in fact flip to Colorado. So I think there's also something to be noted here if Julian Lewis does flip. Julian Lewis, I don't think flips to Colorado. If he does, if Colorado's sitting here right now fighting for bowl eligibility. Say, man, they got 5 wins. If they could find a way to get one of these last 3, like that'd be awesome, good year. And it'd be true. It would be a good year for Deion Sanders in Colorado based on what happened last year, winning 4 football games. I said it before the year. If they can get to a bowl, great year. Y'all, they're in contention for the Big 12 title, control their own destiny, and by that logic, they're 4 quarters away from playing for a college football playoff spot. All right? So, back to what I just said. the groundwork that was laid from guys that maybe not took a risk, because I don't think they probably saw it as a risk, but made the decision to get in on the ground floor when Colorado wasn't a team that was competing for conference titles. Guys like a Travis Hunter, guys like a Jordan Seaton. I mean, guys that also, it's worth noting, big gets there towards the end of the recruiting cycle in their own respective classes. It means that paid off. It paid dividends. Because we said this once Travis Hunter ended up committing to Colorado via the portal. It was one of those situations where we like to see people go first in life before we follow and do something that maybe doesn't have the highest level of certainty to it. Like Travis Hunter has as much to lose as anybody in America when he commits to Jackson State to follow Deion Sanders, when he recommits to Deion Sanders at Colorado. Because Travis Hunter, man, 5-star caliber player, like he's going to have a future in the NFL. That is contingent upon, in some way, shape, or form, his development and his exposure in what he does at the college football level, right? So, hey, you're following this coach who's, at that point in time, never really been a college football coach before, and then he goes to the FBS level, and you're like, okay, you could go to Georgia, probably go to Bama, probably go to Miami, go somewhere that you know without a shadow of a doubt you will get developed. There's a track record there. There's a blueprint there to go and get drafted in the first round. What does he do? He decides, no, I'm doubling down. I'm trusting my guy, Coach Prime. I'm going to follow him to Colorado. And so now that Travis Hunter has done that and come out the other side, I mean, I think he should win the Heisman Trophy, first off. Second off, he's probably a lock to be a top 5, if not the first player taken in next year's draft. We'll see how that whole thing shakes out. The bottom line here is it worked. It worked, and you've seen someone with a lot to gain commit to Colorado, have success, follow the blueprint, trust Coach Prime, and have success. So for Julian Lewis now, that blueprint is now there, laid by a Travis Hunter, being carried out by a Jordan Seaton. We'll see what happens to him as he progresses throughout his career. But, I mean, starting as a true freshman on a team that is going to potentially be in the college football playoff, not a bad start to the career. This is, I think, just a testament to everything that's been built at Colorado in a very short period of time and paints the picture for the future of what they're ultimately going to be. Now, if this does happen too, there's always two sides to every flip, so let's get clear on that together. For USC, there's no way to say it's a good thing to ever lose your quarterback in the class that you've had committed for a long time. No way to paint it in a positive light. If you lose Julian Lewis, yeah, that's a loss, straight up. But I would also say there are very few certainties in life, but death, taxes, and Lincoln Riley having a quarterback is probably a fair categories to have as certainties. Like, if it's not Julian Lewis in this class, they're going to get somebody else. And if it's not somebody in this class they're extremely fired up about, they'll go to the transfer portal. And they'll be a positive, or they'll be, I guess, a major attraction for anyone that decides to seek elsewhere to play their college football based on his track record. I mean, Caleb Williams, Heisman. Baker Mayfield, Heisman. Kyler Murray, Heisman. Jalen Hurts, night and day different player, in my estimation at least, since he went to Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma and now is having success in the NFL, making a lot of money. There's going to be a quarterback for Lincoln Riley, if it's Julian Lewis or not. So, again, the picks are in. We'll keep an eye on this. We'll have thoughts for you if, in fact, Julian Lewis does flip from USC to Colorado. But the impact of this in the immediate sense with what it could mean for Colorado on the recruiting trail and what it could mean for them long-term and how good you feel about Coach Prime staying at Colorado, I think there's enough to be excited about if you're a Colorado fan, period. So we'll keep an eye on that one for you. Now, speaking of Colorado, big one this week, man. Big one this week. Big noon, 12 Eastern on Fox. Utah at Colorado. Colorado 9.5-point favorites. It's all there, man. It's all there for them right now. And let's look back before we look forward here, because Colorado, when Deion Sanders got there, we just said it a second ago, I'll say it again, they were a one-win operation. And not like they won one game and they lost 5 or 6 close games. Like, they were a one-win team, and they were getting bodied in every other game, it felt like. Deion Sanders takes that, wins 4 wins one year. The next year, right now, they control their own destiny to win the Big 12 and make the college football playoff. There's no more wondering, can Deion Sanders do it? He's done it. He's flipped Colorado. Period, mic drop, the end. If they don't win another game this season, this year was a success. And Deion Sanders and what he's done at Colorado is a success. So that's awesome. They can win. Make no mistake about it. But I think the thing that we talk about in this game now, it's not just about winning anymore. It's about finishing. And great teams, great coaches, they have that extra gear, right? You got 3 games between you and the Big 12 championship berth. And then 1 more game there to go make the college football playoff. It's all right there. Good teams win. Great teams can finish. And to make matters more intense now, if you're Colorado, who you have here down the stretch, if you were doing a draft of the top Big 12 coaches, excluding Deion Sanders, these dudes they have left would probably be 3 of the top 4 coaches off the board between Kyle Whittingham, Mike Gundy, and Lance Leipold. You could probably convince me Chris Kleiman is somewhere in that discussion, but you hear what I'm saying. Like, it's some great coaches they're up against. Teams that will be dialed in, and I believe, like Shedeur Sanders said at Big 12 Media Days, and some people kind of laughed at, it will be the Super Bowl for those teams. They're fighting to make bowl eligibility, and if they can spoil Colorado's chances at making the college football playoff and winning the conference, like, yeah, that would be their Super Bowl. Make no mistake about it. Now, for Utah, there's teams that we talk about in the context of being cockroach teams. And what I mean by that, I mean it in an endearing way now, just so we're on the same page. Like, no matter who's on the roster, no matter what returning production they have, no matter what their record is, like, they are always going to be the same team, tough and hard to kill. That is Utah right now in this game against Colorado. We're not 100% sure who's at quarterback in this spot. If it's Isaac Wilson, so be it. If it's Rose, then we'll go from there. But the bottom line here is, at the end of the day, there is no white flag from Utah. They'll be physical. They're going to play good defense. They're going to give Colorado all they can handle for 4 quarters. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it's interesting to note here, this is going to be the best resistance test when it comes to what Shedeur Sanders and this passing attack has done this year. Because throughout the course of the last few weeks, there has been, I think, a really good matchup stylistically for Colorado. Texas Tech, God bless them, they're not great defensively against the pass. Same deal with Arizona. Heck, same deal with, Kansas State. And they lost again to Kansas State, but, they matched up well with Kansas State. UCF, not great defensively in the secondary. This game against Utah now, Utah is top 25 in America when it comes to yards allowed per game through the air, 188. So the opportunity here for Colorado is this. Obviously, if you can't throw the football, then, we'll see what happens when it comes to that final score. But if Colorado can just, quite frankly, look at that box score, look at what Utah's supposed to be on paper, shrug their shoulders, we don't care, all gas, no brakes. It's like, oh, they can legitimately take their fastball anywhere against anyone and feel real good about using it, and that can be the way they win football games. Period, mic drop, the end. If for whatever reason they can't throw the ball the way they want to, and they find another legitimate pitch to beat Utah with, we've talked about the emergence of the run game. Augusta has been awesome this year for them, the balance they've had. If they can find another way to win a football game without Shedeur Sanders going for 290 to 300, I think that's terrifying for the rest of the Big 12. Because that means now that this Colorado team is real deal balanced. Like, we've talked about them being balanced, but there's no more wondering or guessing as to how good they can be and what they can beat you with. That would scare me. That's the Colorado that I would not want to see in the Big 12 title game from BYU. That's the Colorado I would not want to see the first round of the college football playoff. Or the second round. I guess they would have a bye in that case, depending on what happens with Boise State. Another discussion for another time. So it's a great test for them in that sense. I think it's really interesting to see the physicality of Utah against Colorado. Now, do not hear me incorrectly. I am not telling you I have questions about Colorado defensively with how physical they've been. They've been physical. They're top 10 in the country when it comes to rushing the passer. Right? They've answered a lot of questions as to what they're bringing up front. However, we have seen now in different points throughout the season, a little bit of the issue for Colorado defensively has been defending the quarterback run. Now, they did a great job against Avery Johnson at Kansas State most recently. Had some issues against North Dakota State in that first game. Some issues against Baylor. Issues against KJ Jefferson and UCF. So in the spot now, if it is Brandon Rose for Utah, he brings a little bit more of that mobile element, some of those design quarterback runs. Can you fix the issues you had early on in the year? Now, in a one-game sample size, the Kansas State game, you point to and say, yes, they can. They did right there. Great. Can you fix the things that are going to keep you from winning the Big 12, quite frankly? Like, great teams make adjustments throughout the year. Colorado has done that all year long. In this spot, though, it would be like an exclamation mark of sorts if they can match up with Utah physically, win this football game, and be 2 games away from making the Big 12 title game. That would be what it's going to require here. Now, as we talk about with this every single time with Colorado, but I want to double down on it right now, it's always going to be about game flow to some respect. And not that Colorado can't win another style of ball game. We saw them go down 13-0 and then turn on the nitrous and go on and, or hit the nitrous, and then they went on and won that football game against Texas Tech anyway. But I still think, man, if Colorado gets out to an early lead against Utah, whoever's at quarterback, man, Isaac Wilson, Brandon Rose, doesn't matter. Whoever's at quarterback, you're not catching Colorado in a track meet. You're not. I like to be fun to imagine you could, but like you are not taking down Colorado or catching up to Colorado if you are behind, have to throw the football if you're Utah who wants to be a run the football team. And oh, by the way, you can't throw to one side of the field with Travis Hunter locking down. Like that's not going to be a way that you win. So I think this game is very fascinating because of the fact that Utah is coming off of an emotional loss in the Holy War against BYU. I think Colorado wins. I think Utah is just such a vicious competitor. I think Utah actually covers. Now, I think we'll look at this game and say, yep, that was definitively Colorado. But I could see a 33-24 game. I could see a 31-23 game. So, again, Colorado wins. Utah covers, potentially a little backdoor cover action. But Colorado, at this point in time, checks another box. I think beats, in a lot of people's minds, the best coach in the Big 12, in Kyle Whittingham, excluding Deion Sanders from that conversation. And things get very interesting down the stretch now with 2 games ahead of Colorado and a chance to punch their ticket to the college football playoff with the win in the Big 12 conference championship game, that is. The plot thickens. It's going to be a lot of fun, but stay dialed into that one because that's going to be very telling, I think, for how good Colorado could be when it comes to their postseason aspirations. One more game for you here before we let y'all go and we jump into our prep for our Wednesday and jump into our prep, quite frankly, for tonight with these college football playoff rankings. You got Mizzou going to South Carolina, 4:15 Eastern on the SEC Network. Hey, don't sleep now. We'll see what these playoff rankings say tonight, but I'd be wildly surprised if this is not a top 25 matchup going down in Columbia, South Carolina. Interesting to note, too. This game be played in Columbia, whether it was at Mizzou or at South Carolina. Neither here nor there. Let's get into this, though, man. South Carolina, they're rolling right now. There's a reason they're a 12.5-point favorite. This is what Shane Beamer does. Like, as the year progresses, you've heard of Cocktober. How about Crowvember? How about that? He is 8-2 against SEC opponents in the month of November at South Carolina. That's not coincidental. That is him having his team ready to play and trending upward, what we just said a second ago in our previous breakdowns, fixing mistakes, getting guys in position to play their best football towards the end of the year. That's South Carolina, and that's been them really the last few games. I mean, the Vandy game, you're like, okay, we'll see. Hey, I don't know, Diego Pavia in Nashville, he's given some talented teams some problems. South Carolina won that game definitively. And that was after the emotional win over Texas A&M, where you're storming the field in Columbia, South Carolina. Now for Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, post-game interview after they beat Oklahoma last week at the crib, he says, we're still in the playoff hunt. He doubled down. He said, yeah, I said it, playoff hunt. Now, I think a lot of people, myself included, were like, I don't know if a win over Oklahoma puts you in the playoff, Coach Drinkwitz. However, you want to have a little bit more juice to that conversation. You want to be able to have a little bit more validity when you say something like that. Go beat the brakes off a team at their place after they beat a top 10 A&M team, and you're a double-digit underdog, 2-score underdog. That would get my attention. That would be, I think, something where you start to look at this game, look at this Missouri team a little bit differently. Still, I have a hard time getting on board with Missouri being a playoff team, but make it a conversation. Go win this football game. Missouri, I'm not sure who's playing quarterback just yet. If you're a Missouri fan, you would obviously like to see your leader of your football team, Brady Cook, back in the lineup. I think that's pretty obvious. Regardless of who's at quarterback, this game is about getting the football to your best players. Your best players are Luther Burden. Your best players are Theo Weiss Jr. Like, I need a Kirby Moore kind of game here if I'm Missouri. The reason why? You're probably going to have like 1.5 to 2 Mississippis to get the football to a Luther Burden or a Theo Weiss. Why? Because you got Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard that are, just jansporting a top 5 sack rate in college football for South Carolina. They have wreaked havoc all year long against better offensive lines than what Missouri has up front. So, like, if I'm Kirby Moore, like, I need to find ways to dial up something quick. You know, find ways to get the ball in Luther Burden's hands. It could be wildcat. It could be the quick screens. It could be the quick game. Like, whatever it is, man, I need to find a way to get the football to those dudes that can real deal impact the game and scare South Carolina and do it without my quarterback getting his head blown off every other play. All right, that's going to be crucial, regardless of who's playing quarterback. Because I think for South Carolina, man, like, it's not going to take anything that we haven't seen from them yet this year to win this football game. And that's not me trying to dunk on Missouri. Just like, quite frankly, there's not one matchup I point to if I'm South Carolina or Missouri and I say, yep, Missouri owns that one. We got to find a way to keep them from taking advantage of that matchup. I mentioned the receivers for Missouri. I love South Carolina's secondary. I love the ranginess of them and how they match up there. I think you're more than fine. That probably is the best matchup that Missouri has, but I don't think it's one that Missouri can own. So if that's the case now, how would Missouri go about beating South Carolina at their place? I mean, how does anything in college football ever happen that's not supposed to happen? You get one side that's supposed to be the favorite, that's trending with all these matchups, and they have a letdown spot. Letdown, take their foot off the gas. They read too much of their tweets, and they hear how great they are, and they just don't bring their best to the table. I want to see South Carolina in this spot meet the moment. Like, good rosters can win football games. Good teams have a what's next mentality. Like, Matt Rule talked a lot about this when he was at Baylor. He's like, whether we win a football game, whether it's a bad practice, whether we lose, whatever it is, like, we have this what's next mentality. We won, what's next? Hey, we just beat A&M, and the place went crazy, and there was a party in Columbia, South Carolina, what's next? Go to Nashville, beat Vandy, what's next? That's got to be South Carolina's approach here in a top 25 matchup against Missouri. Because if they don't bring their A game, we've seen now, anyone can get beat. Anyone can get beat. So how would that happen? How would South Carolina bring their best to the table? I think you look at your thermostat players, right? The guys who set the temperature for your football team. There is nobody that sets the temperature more for this football team than Lenora Sellers. And great quarterbacks, man, they are the ones that, regardless of the spot, just do whatever it takes to win the game. And that sounds cliche, but I think that has been the epitome of true for Lenora Sellers really throughout this year for South Carolina. Hey, Lenoris, we need you to break 3 or 4 sacks in a row against A&M to keep plays alive and keep us in positive situations. Great, you can do that. Hey, Lenora Sellers, we need you to go for, call it 75 yards on the ground for us to win this game. Great, we'll go there. Whatever it takes in this game from Lenora Sellers, that's what I want to see. That's what stars in this sport have done really, since the sport began, but especially over the course of the last few years, especially at quarterback. Be the difference maker. Be the one that does what it takes. I think that's what he does in this spot. So again, if I'm Missouri, there's nobody that you've beaten that makes me feel confident in picking you. And that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. A win over Boston College without their starting quarterback doesn't do it for me. Win over Vanderbilt, great, but that was before they kind of caught their tempo. That was also, I believe, in a torrential downpour in overtime. Maybe. I remember more vividly the loss against A&M. I know you didn't have Brady Cook in the football game, but the loss against Alabama feels pretty fresh in my mind. Oklahoma, they're not all that great. It shouldn't have been that close if we're going to just be real here. So I think Crowember continues. I think South Carolina wins. Y'all, I think this line is what it is because they're unsure about Brady Cook. I'll take South Carolina to cover regardless. So we will take South Carolina to get it done in Willie B, and Crowember continues to roll on. Immaculate vibes, immaculate week 12. I can't wait for this, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. There's more matchups, too, I want to get to throughout the course of this week. Again, Thursday's show will more than likely not be here, so we got tomorrow to react to the rankings together. I'm going to, after we get off the air here, tweet out, hey, hit me with your college football playoff hypotheticals. We will definitely go into the 10-2 madness in the SEC that could potentially ensue. We will talk about whatever other hypotheticals you want to talk about. We'll react to the rankings. The greatest sport on the face of planet Earth, man. There is a reason why we're able to have this show. And it's a large part because of y'all and because of the great sport that college football is. So we don't take it for granted. Feel extremely lucky and appreciate y'all for being a part of this show and making it what it is. So for myself, JD PicKell, for Trey Annan, Cade Smith on the 1s and 2s, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all